Hello and welcome to the Single Malt Frontier, where we explore the edge of innovation in American single malt whiskey. Here on the show, we do a little bit of tasting and a lot of talking. Usually we talk about whiskey, but the best thing about whiskey is the conversations that we get to have along the way, and we get to talking about a little bit of everything. And as you can see from the number of faces on the screen right now, boy, do we have a conversation for you today. If this is your first time tuning in, or if you just haven't gotten around to it yet, please take a moment to like and subscribe, leave a comment, give us a review, share with your friends. We do this podcast because we love it. And if you love it too, the best thing you can do for us is to help us grow. So you can find all of us on our respective Instagrams or in the Whiskey Lodge. Links to all of that are in the description. If you're in the live chat today, say hello to each other. Get to know your neighbor. We're all friends here. In addition to YouTube, we're an audio podcast now. You can find us on Podbean, Player FM, soon Apple and Spotify. Besides those places, let us know where you personally like to listen to your podcast, and we'll make sure that we get there. So this is kind of fun. As far as we know, we're the main active podcast focused on American single malt whiskey right now. If you know of others, let us know because we'd love to collaborate with them, just like we're doing with the Bourbon Van today. So with no further ado, let's actually start introducing everyone who's on your screen. I'm your host, Doug. You know me. That's Phil of the Ranger's Respite. Say hello also to our special co-host, Phil from the Bourbon Van. So we have two Phils today. Hopefully that won't be confusing. And introducing our panel of producers of Mesquite-Smoked American Single Malts, we have, I made up some fun titles for you guys, bear with me. We have the Radagast of Texas whiskey and rum, Moose Allen from Andalusia Whiskey. We have the scientist of the Southwest, the first of his name before he gave it to his own brand of Mesquite-Smoked Single Malts, Colin Keegan from Santa Fe Spirits. And we have the artisan of Arizona, Mark Viertaler from Whiskey Del Bac. Welcome, everyone. So looking forward to this.
Howdy.
So before we get into sort of a deeper introduction of our guests, first of all, I want to let Phil from the Ranger's Respite give us an update about the Virginia Whiskey Tournament.
Oh,
I think you're muted.
We are
okay.
Partway through.
Sorry.
Oh, shoot.
We'll manage.
Well, we'll keep my speaking to a minimum since I can't escape this gremlin. We are most of the way through the first bouts of round 3. We're down to 8 total distilleries, and most of the distilleries remain in the tournament are single malt whiskey producers. And I will pass this back off to Doug.
So that says great things about American single malt, that the majority of the remaining producers are American single malt producers. Not that we play favorites around here, but not to get too much into the weeds on that one. So for everyone who regularly watches this show, you may or may not already know of the Bourbon Van, which is an awesome channel that focuses on whiskey travels and trying local craft whiskeys from all over the place. You may be wondering what the heck someone with the name Bourbon is doing on an American single malt podcast. So Phil, tell us a little bit about the Bourbon Van and how you found yourself here.
Well, it just flowed off the tongue to call it the Bourbon Van initially. We, as the title would suggest, drive around in our van, find cool people and places in the whiskey community and share as much as we can. Bourbon was primarily my first love of whiskey. Grew up in the Midwest, so that's just the natural thing. And when I came to Oregon here, started to discover American single malts more and more. And then recently we went on a 100-day road trip to the American Southwest, and pretty much all the whiskeys that we found that we loved were American single malt whiskeys, and many of them just happened to be mesquite smoked. So brand new flavor for us that we fell in love with. Me in particular, I just think it's fantastic. So might say the Bourbon Van, but it's really, the whiskey bus or something.
The whiskey bus sounds great. All right, so let's get into our guests now. So I guess let's just sort of go around the table, as it were. And Colin, would you introduce yourself and what you do?
Hi, I'm Colin Keegan. I'm currently now just an ambassador for Santa Fe Spirits. It's a new ownership in the company, which is not me. Used to be just me. Now it's a new group who's going to really give us the legs to go bigger, which is exciting. And I get to do what I do, which is talk whiskey. I can give you the whole backstory, but we're going to go back to that in a minute, I think.
I'm sure we're going to cover a whole lot of stuff as we
Yeah.
go. So, Mark, tell us about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, my name is Mark A. Viertaler. I'm the head distiller and blender at Whiskey Del Bac here in Tucson, Arizona. Actually came on board just over 3 years ago, right at the 10th anniversary of Whiskey Del Bac. And we are almost exclusively an American single malt whiskey producer.
Almost. Maybe we'll get into that later.
Yeah. We've expanded.
All right, and last
recently.
but not least, Moose, would you introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
My name's Moose Allen. I am the head distiller and the everything else guy at Andalusia Whiskey Company in Blanco, Texas. And I just make everybody smile, man.
That's good.
Yeah, cheers to that. All right. So I think one of the probably the most obvious place to start the questioning is to sort of ask how everybody got started. And I think that the answers to that in terms of when you all came to your respective brands may actually be fairly interesting. So what was it like for y'all when you founded or joined your brands?
Should I just go first as we're going in that order? Yeah. Unlike Mark, we have a whole portfolio of everything. I was an architect before the whiskey nonsense, as we call it, and designed a house in an apple orchard. Project fell apart. I ended up buying and living in the apple orchard, making apple brandy. I know so little about the industry. I realized I'm a moonshiner when I actually applied for a license. Oh, better stop that. Not that they cared as long as I wasn't selling it. And when I bought buildings and stills and things, so maybe I should get a business plan together. So I realized that not enough people drink apple brandy. So whiskey was a love that I developed over the years, specifically single malts coming from back home from England or very close to Scotland, which is where I grew up. England now has some good single malts, by the way, but that's probably another whole podcast. Anyway, I won't get too much into the weeds, but one thing led to another. We started in 2010 with an unaged whiskey, technically a single malt. Some of you might know our Silver Coyote. And it's a white dog, but in New Mexico, Silver Coyote seems to fit a bit better than a white dog. Anyway, and we started making whiskey straight away. But as you all know, it takes a while to get recipes right and learn aging process properly, etc. So it was 2015 when Kilkeegan was first released.
Awesome. All right. Next up, Mark.
Yeah. So this is actually, for me, super cool. Like, I'm really excited for this. We actually have Kilkeegan and Andalusia at our distillery, because when people go, oh, a mesquite American single malt, we're like, oh, we're not the only ones. And so we kind of began, the idea formulated in our founder's head around 2006, 2007. Stephen Paul, who's our founder, he and his wife owned a furniture business here in Tucson that was specifically focused around mesquite furniture. And both of them are also really enthusiastic single malt drinkers. And the joke has always been that Stephen's wife, Elaine, is the idea woman. And they were sitting in the backyard one night, burning some of the scraps from the carpentry business. And Elaine happened to say out loud, they use peat to dry malt in Scotland. Has anyone ever considered using mesquite for it? And Stephen's the type of guy, once he kind of gets this idea in his head, he's going to see it through to the end. So in the back of his wood shop, he taught himself how to floor malt, taught himself how to distill, similar to Colin, wasn't all on the up and up at first. Yeah. And finally, just kind of, he was sampling people on it, and people were like, oh, this is starting to get really good. And his daughter, Amanda, happened to have come back from New York, where she was living, and was like, hey, this idea has legs. Let's create a distillery. And so Hamilton Distillers Group, which is our overhead group, was founded. And again, coming up concurrently with Colin, this idea of a mesquite-smoked single malt, creating something that is of its place, that is distinctive, that is really kind of evocative of where we come from. And yeah, so that 2011 is when Hamilton Distillers, which then became doing business as Whiskey Del Bac, opened. And yeah, I came along incredibly luckily 3 years ago. I was actually distilling back in Maryland and was doing some consulting work and happened to have a friend who was doing some work with Whiskey Del Bac. And they're like, hey, they're looking for a head distiller. Do you have any interest in the desert Southwest? And it's like, I can't say I've ever considered it, but I'm not opposed to the idea. And she was like, well, it's a whiskey maker and it's Mesquite Single Malt. Well, I knew it had to be two different distilleries. So yeah, interviewed for it and came on board 3 years ago. And I've been lucky enough to be able to take over a brand that was very well regarded, very well respected, and even kind of put my thumbprint on it a little bit. So we do an unsmoked. That's our classic. Our kind of flagship is our Dorado, which is our mesquite smoked. We then have a heavy mesquite smoke that comes out every winter. And yeah, and then we expanded into rye relatively recently, about 2 years ago. But yeah, it's been very, very cool. Hey, I see that bottle.
Naturally, I pointed the wrong way because. All right, and last but not least, again, Moose Allen. We should rotate the order that we answer questions in, I think, so we don't have.
All right. My name's Moose Allen. My name is not actually Moose. It is Lucas. I will not speak on why my name is Moose. That's a whole story within itself. I came into Andalusia Whiskey Company as a guy driving up and down the road, and I was, everyone's dirty little secret. I was a home distiller as well, and my thing was rum. Big surprise. I was a really bad home brewer and had to have something to do with bad juice, so throw it in a still, and eventually I figured out that fermenting molasses was way easier than all grain brews. So, one thing led to the other, and I became a rum maker. But I had a love for bourbon, whiskey, rye, malt, and in general, just all things spirit, I guess. And so I was always driving up and down Highway 281 through Blanco, and I was a low voltage electrician before this in my previous life. So I spent a lot of time on the road, maybe a week or two out of every month on the road away from home. A lot of that time driving home was down 281. So I guess throughout 2016, as Andalusia was building their building up, there was talk around town, and then as Whiskey Tribe got big and all the whole whiskey fandom kind of really began to start to take hold, word got out that they were open. And so I was coming in from out of town one day, and my wife was like, you should swing by. You've always been talking about it. Go swing by, have a glass of whiskey. So I swung in and actually was not a fan of smoky whiskeys. Tried everything, did a little flight of everything they had, the peated whiskey, the Revenant Oak, their White Dog, which they had just changed the name from White Pearl, and their flagship whiskey, Striker, which is Applewood, Oak, and Mesquite smoked. Mm-hmm. And then their Irish style triple distilled single malt. And lo and behold, I was in love with the hardwood smoked one. I'm a barbecue fan, lifelong Texan. And it just kind of spoke to me, man. It was really well balanced. And I knew at that point, I was like, I've got to quit my job and I have to work here. So then it was just figuring out, how do I do that? So I came in and I kept bugging these guys, and I'm like, hey, asking dumb questions like, what does it take to open a distillery? And they're like, a shit ton of money. I'm like, oh, well, we better think about doing something else. So I got to figure out how to work here. Are you guys hiring? No, absolutely. We're not hiring. It's the two of us. We're the bartenders. We're the brewers, we're the distillers, we're the everything. We're the janitorial crew, we're the craftsmen, we're the carpenters, we're the plumbers, that sort of thing. So I came in, I gave them a resume. They essentially tossed it to the side, and I basically picked up a shovel and I said, "You guys are graining out the mash tun right now, right? Let me help." So I started shoveling grain into a mash tun. I'd take trash out. Basically, anytime I drove up and down that highway, or if I was leaving a particular job, I found a reason to go that way and just swing in, take out a couple bags of trash, pay your dues. And I did it the very old school way, man. I worked my way up from the guy that was just a volunteer to being a contract laborer, basically, coming in when I could, doing bottling and working events, things like that. Eventually, they let me start babysitting the still and brewing. And after a while, it was just me. And, Ty kind of had me under his wing for a little bit. And at some point, they left and they just left me to my own devices. And here we are today. So now Stryker has become by far our biggest seller. It is, anytime I talk to anybody that knows anything about Andalusia, has heard anything about our name, it's usually about Stryker. We do make other things as well. I make rum and I make brandy. Those are smoked yet, but as soon as I smoke a rum with mesquite, we're going to redo all this, right?
Yeah.
So basically, I don't know, man. I just like to, keep within the lines, but still be the wild card. And, as much smoke as I can put into a spirit where people are still going to drink it, I'm going to really try and push the limits. And so I've been, constantly just pushing a little more and a little more, but keeping it all balanced has improved my blending skills. So I do all the blending. I'm the guy that picks the barrels. I choose what goes in, what stays out. I make the cuts on the still. So I don't know. I wear a lot of hats up there, man. And I kind of just threw myself to the wolves and they let me do it. So, they get what they get.
Nice. That's a bootstrap story for sure. I'm going to just highlight this comment real quick. Anyone who ever cleans out a mash tun is hired. Yeah.
It's glorified janitorial work. It's
I don't know
sexy when it gets into a bottle,
man.
but
I think with most distilleries, if you go by and say, "Hey, I see you mashing in or mashing out," whatever the phrase is you use, Moose, most of us will go, "Hey, you sound like you know distilling. You're hired." In most cases, I mean, a lot of people are like, "Yeah, I'd like to be a distiller. I drink whiskey." Yeah, that doesn't necessarily qualify you.
No.
do you like going home stinking to high heaven? Awesome.
Yes.
We can have this discussion then.
Can you
That's an
sweat
important
heavily?
question.
Yes. Okay, you can do it.
Yeah, I'm with Freedom Malts. If you make a smoked rum, I'm all in for that. Let's make it funkier. You've got the Dunder, you've got the Mesquite. I have a feeling those would be really interesting flavor.
I haven't had a smoked rum, that's for sure. Wow, exciting.
All right, so since Moose kind of gave us the product breakdown, I want to just loop back around to Colin and Mark and ask to also give us just a little bit of the highlights of the portfolio, if you would. Let's start with Mark. Let's start with Colin.
Yeah. I think we're still going in order, so I'll just dive in first. I'm not normally that much of a bully liar, but anyway. So Kilkeegan being mesquite smoked we wanted to keep it regional. It's a bit like the guys at Del Bac, and Mark attested to that a little earlier, keeping it authentic, keeping it regional. They don't call them mesquite trees here. They're juniper trees, but they're in the mesquite family. There's two trees. This is New Mexico. There's, 4 inches of rain a year. Our trees are all about this tall. So, there's not much to choose from. It's pinon or juniper. Pinon is great for fires, but gives an acrid back taste. When you get that over tar smell in a fire, that's what we were distilling. That didn't work, which is why it took us 5 years to get the first ones on. The mesquite, as it was, kicked in, started being great. To be honest, we're not marketing folks. We went, hey, after about 2 years, that's what you use on barbecues. Hey, we got an angle. we're a little slow on the uptake, but anyway. So mesquite smoke is really what we wanted to be known for. So everything starts with this, up until recently, starts with the same recipe: a third mesquite smoke grain, a third aged in new oak, and 2/3 in used oak, and a minimum 3 year. Probably fairly similar to the other guys, maybe not the oak cask mix. So it's smoked. It started off being smoked by another single malt maker, Copper Fox. Gosh, I'm forgetting his name. It'll come to me. I've got grey hair. I've got an excuse for forgetting things.
Rick Wasmond, and by the way, Phil,
Rick Wasmond, that's right. It's yes. Rick did it. And his mum used to do the floor malting. He's our ages, and his mum used to do the floor malting. Go figure. Anyway, Breese Malting House took that on, and these guys all know Breese Malting House. They do all our smoked grain for us now. So that's the mainstay. As we go along, the cask strength came out next, which is fairly obvious because somebody said, we want cask strength. We said, oh, yeah, we can do a high proof. That is actually our single cask release. So that's number 2 whiskey that came out. That came out in about 2017. 2018, we started playing with finishes, and we make an apple brandy. You heard the story. It started because of apple brandy. So we have these 25-gallon finishing casks now for Kilkeegan, but we still make the apple brandy that way. And we're pushing the oak. It's new oak. It's only been used a year. So the apple brandy casks, actually, at 25 gallons, has a higher surface to liquid ratio, which pushes the oak a bit. And they've only had apple brandy in for a year. So that's, an oakier product. And instead of a minimum 3, that's a minimum 4. So that was number 3. What was number 4? Oh, number 4, because the apple brandy cask finish was doing so well, we decided to start playing with other ideas. And we had tried a sherry cask finish. So that was our Pedro Jimenez sherry cask finish. Not that we aged it in 25 gallons. We actually imported sherry butts. We did have to recharge them with sherry, as you can imagine. By the time they come from Portugal to a broker's warehouse to us, there's not much sherry left. So we do recharge them. They're 60-gallon butts, those are. And the reason we actually were pushing for a 4th was a 10-year anniversary, which, of course, now was 4 years ago, which was 2020. Of course, COVID came along. That ended up being released in 2021. In 2022, we were playing around with actually our Silver Coyote, or we were 3 years previous, and it started tasting good. So we put some unsmoked single malt into casks, new and used, a similar recipe except for the smoke. And that was the unsmoked, which came out in 2023. And just earlier this year, actually, no, later in 2023, sorry, it was ready for the holidays. We were very happy to say we have a bottled in bond. So, and if you'd like to send me addresses, I'll send you all a bottle. I know, Mark, you've probably tried it, Mark, haven't you? Moose may not have, but you guys let me know. We only made 1,000 bottles. There's a few left, but I know a guy.
Very good.
Yeah. And that actually is definitely an awesome whiskey. It's actually about 5 years old. Therefore, it's sort of deeper, richer. I could go into the nuances of each, but, another time, another place. I need some whiskey. It's Mark's turn.
And it's so interesting. Like Whiskey Del Bac, we backed in to the mesquite thing. The dirty little secret within Whiskey Del Bac is Stephen doesn't like smoked whiskeys. Inspired by Isla Scotch.
I wasn't going to say that, but I had a drink with him many times, and he says, "Oh, I'll have a Dalwhinnie." What?
Mm-hmm. Dalwhinnie, a Macallan, a Balvenie. Yeah. So the very first product that actually came out was an unsmoked product, what eventually became our classic. Stephen's kind of go-to has been the Macallan 12, just an excellent utilitarian Scotch. This is a high quality, we can sit down, we can sip it. And so because smoke is so divisive, because smoke can put a lot of people off, his first thought was, well, let's create an unsmoked product that people can drink by itself on the rocks in cocktails. And so once he had established Classic, that's when Dorado came about. And because Stephen doesn't like to do anything simple, we initially, when the distillery started, we malted 100% of the malt that we used, both smoked and unsmoked.
That's impressive.
We realized pretty quickly as we expanded that is not feasible. that is very malting is very labor intensive. Malting in the desert Southwest in Tucson, when in the summer we're hitting 100, 105, 110, very, very difficult. So we do source our unsmoked malt now, but we are still making our Mesquite smoked malt in-house. We have a custom malt house that Stephen designed with an engineering firm that helped design some of our distilling equipment as well. And yeah, we've also, interestingly enough, pulled back the smoke over the years. When Dorado first came about, when Whiskey Del Bac was kind of making a name for itself, we were known for these smoke bombs, these very aggressive, very forward, smoky American single malts. And I love those. That is when Stephen and I will give a presentation together. It is the fun little dichotomy of Stephen being like, yeah, I'm not a fan of smoke. And I'm like, yes, please. Let's get as close to that as we possibly can. Consumers, on the other hand, and at the end of the day, while we are artists, we are also business people. You have to have something that people are interested in. And so over the years, we've dialed that smoke back. And we actually start with a 40% smoked malt, 60% unsmoked malt mash bill. Mesquite's really interesting. When you use peat, you have that very famous reek, iodine, Band-Aid, tire fire in a swamp. Mesquite's its own thing. It's its own beast, which is what makes it cool. Is people say, okay, you have a mesquite smoked whiskey. What does that taste like? Well, it tastes like mesquite. And if you're familiar with Texas barbecue, if you're familiar with cooking, if you're familiar with pinyon in New Mexico, you walk around the barrio in Tucson in winter and you're smelling mesquite. And so it's this very sweet, almost kind of honeyed note to it. And so the Dorado is what was born out of that, was this blend of smoked and unsmoked, and to kind of create something that was evocative of the desert Southwest. And those are our two core, the Classic and the Dorado. Then, as we've kind of already touched on, producing alcohol is factory work. I mean, you show up, you make a mess, you clean it up, you do the exact same thing day after day. And so one of the ways to keep engaged is to do one-offs, do unique kind of experiments. And so Whiskey Del Bac has had what we call our Distiller's Cut series, which has been ways for the production team to be a little more creative, create something that's a little more divisive. And we've created some really amazing things. And two of our now special releases that come out every year, which is our Frontera and our Normandy, were born out of that. I mean, come on, Pedro Jimenez sherry and single malt, they go hand in hand. It's peanut butter and jelly. And so one of the most popular Distiller's Cuts we ever did was this PX finished of our unsmoked. And so we got our hands on a couple of more Botas, 120 gallon. And we're this every year, every spring, we have an unsmoked that comes out finished in those sherry casks. I have a soft spot for apple brandy. I made Applejack back east. I think the heaviness and those really nice, just pronounced stone fruit notes you get, especially in American single malt, are complemented really well by those brighter, fruitier notes of apple. And so Normandy is finished in Calvados casks.
Nice.
But one of my personal favorites, and especially since we're talking about mesquite smoked, was it used to be called our winter release. We now call it our Ode to Isla, which I'll admit I'm sipping on right now. That's our heavy smoke. That is hearkening back to the original Dorado. This is heavy mesquite. Kind of going back to what Moose talked about. My theory with these is let's get as close to too smoky as we can. and then let's back it off a little bit so that people still actually want to drink it. And so we've gotten a lot of really great feedback on it, and it's hard to tell on the label, but Amanda, who's our co-founder, Steven's daughter, who's also our director of marketing and kind of our head designer, on the label, it's the constellation map. It's the star map of Tucson in winter, because you create this idea of, we want to transport you. We want to take you to the place we love and the place we're from. And so those all came about from this idea of creating something unique, creating something that is a love letter to where we're from, creating something that is delicious. Because again, at the end of the day, it still has to be something that people want to pick up. And yeah, and then our third core SKU, which I will touch on, is our rye, which that actually was born out of, we kept getting the question, are you ever going to make a bourbon? Are you ever going to make a rye? If you don't want to get too far into the weeds about production processes, single malt production is different than most American whiskeys. And we are a production space that is set up for American single malt whiskey production. And that also means, because American single malt is very labor intensive, the prices tend to reflect that. And so we were like, if we're going to do an offering that is not single malt, that is a little more financially accessible, thankfully, because people have kind of started to realize when you're transparent and you're honest about things, source products aren't quite the dirty word that they were a long time ago. And so we tasted through a bunch of different ryes from a bunch of distilleries from all over the country, and ended up settling on the famous 95.5. I always make the joke, and I'm not exaggerating, I tasted through hundreds of rye samples, and some were from really good distilleries that were way too expensive, and some were really terrible and way too expensive. And just coming back to that Indiana mash bill, we knew we could start with a solid, consistent product. And we also knew we wanted to make something unique. We didn't want to take something and just be like, yeah, this is ours. We totally made this. That's us. And so the first thought, obviously, is because we have all these mesquite smoked casks that had Dorado in them before, we're going to finish. And we did. We got our hands on a couple of 2- and 3-year-old casks, finished them in our Dorado barrels, and it was fine. There was that influence of mesquite, but it wasn't different enough. You could still tell where it came from. And kind of one of the advantages of us doing our own malting in-house was, I will always maintain, I've never had a good idea. I steal everyone else's, and was like, oh, we have a whole bunch of mesquite charcoal. What happens if we take this finished whiskey and pour it over the charcoal we've created from our malting process? And that's kind of what changed it. And so what was born was Sentinel, which is a sourced but finished and blended by us. And again, leaning into the mesquite, it is the core of our business. It's the core of what we do. And so yeah, it kind of became our third offering, what we started calling the Sonoran Trio. So yeah, those are the main ones that we produce here at Whiskey Del Bac. We have lots of fun one-offs. We released a bottled and bond this summer, which we were really excited for. Very similar to like what Colin said. It is our classic. It's our unsmoked, but it's deeper. It's richer. It's a little more evolved.
All right. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to highlight a couple of questions from chat, and then I'm going to turn it over to the Bourbon Van for the next question. So first of all, we had this hilarious comment from the Bartlemay. I described the smoke on my clothes as going home smelling of awkward bacon, which got quite a lot of laughs in chat. Also, hey, let's just have some shout outs. So Jim Bandy checking in. Hi, Jim. David Woodruff says, damn, I thought I was cured of FOMO, but now I must have a mesquite smoked whiskey. Can confirm. It's great. You should try it. Sorry to contribute to your FOMO. That's kind of what we do here. As we like to say, we've played ourselves. The farther along we go in this podcasting thing, the more things we end up getting and trying and exploring from there. And also, I promised a shout out to the Whiskey Punkard, who was the very first person at 7:55 a.m. who saw our video go up and immediately commented. So there's a lot of excitement about this. It's good to have you all in chat. Thanks for joining. So now, Phil, over to you, Bourbon Van, for the next question.
Whiskey Punkard, very dedicated, absolutely. Very cool to see Caitlin here from Clear Creek Distillery. You know, McCarthy's was actually my introduction to smoked whiskey, and what an introduction! The peat and the smoke, it's absolutely massive on that. But was recently down in Tucson, Arizona. I haven't been to Blanco, Texas, or to Santa Fe. Hopefully, in the next year. Wondering, in my mind, I have to think, I have to think that heat is the primary difficulty for at least some of you. Is it the same for all of you? Is heat the biggest problem in both creating whiskey and aging it and keeping an eye on the time, the length of time that you're aging it? Or do you have bigger fish to fry, more difficulty elsewhere?
Well,
I'll talk about heat, man.
yeah, let us talk about heat. I mean, oh, goodness gracious.
So I don't know about other people's setup, but my distillery is all open air, so nothing is temperature controlled, as in there's no air conditioner. If it's 110 degrees outside, it's 110 degrees in the production room. That being said, if it's 30 degrees outside, it's like 40 degrees in the production room, unless you are right next to the still. So heat wise, I fight the heat when I'm fermenting. It really works the hell out of a chiller. And then in the rick house, our rick house is also not insulated. There's no climate control. So other than it being out of the elements, it is still left to the wild temperature swings we have. And I spend a massive amount of time chasing leaky barrels. You know, it's me and barrel wax and spiles and chisels and wedges, and and it's so unpredictable too, man. Especially if we have a 20 to sometimes 40 degree temperature swing throughout a 24-hour period. You may have a leaky barrel one day and you go fill a big slot in between two staves on the barrel head full of wax because it's just oozing like crazy, and then it gets cold overnight. Well, all that wood compresses and it'll squeeze like a bacon ribbon of wax out of that thing, and then by the end of the day it's hot again and it's spread back apart. And at some point you got to question your life choices and what you've decided to do. But I've definitely hit a wall with certain barrels where I've only got one barrel that's older than 5 years old right now that has not had to have hoops re-slammed on it or some sort of major work. And it's in a constant state of élevage, so I'm always adding water to it, and then it goes down, and I add water to it. And I've been doing that process for 2 years. I think that barrel's about 7 years old. Other than that, man, I'm hitting a wall about 5 years if the barrel hasn't just completely given up. And I'll reuse a barrel several times, but even on a new barrel like a Striker or my Paladuro, which is all Texas grown malt, all new barrel aged, after about 4 years and how hot it gets in the summer and the way that we work a barrel here in Central Texas, at 4 to 5 years, you start really flirting with getting that over oaked, like too tannic, bitter, acrid, just from the barrel. Not to mention the fact that, did I put way more mesquite versus oak into a certain whiskey? Is this 100% mesquite? And was I crazy? Is it like a 80% smoked malt whiskey? I don't know. These are all things that play into that, but the heat definitely keeps you on your toes, and it's a constant. It's just a constant test of, are you going to walk into a puddle of whiskey on the floor or not? Did you fix it right? And then did you let it go too long over a hot summer? Our last 2 years, we're in an insane drought right now and kind of sneaking out of it, but not so much. after these last 2 years, some of our new barrel stuff that, like our bottled and bond single malt is a new barrel aged whiskey. And it's generally a blend of 4 and 5 year old barrels. But those 5-year-old barrels, like I said, I'm kind of playing with fire here. They can either go all furfural and fun medicinal cherry and be beautiful, or they can get really tannic and acrid, and it's like it goes one way or the other, like a metronome that just turns off at one point. And so you really that's my biggest thing, is trying to find the symphony, just ride the symphony with the heat and the barrels and what I have chose to put into a barrel and what kind of barrel I've done. Has it been used 8 million times? Because if so, summers are hell on it, man. I just had to get rid of some really cool Long Pond rum barrels because 2 years with me, and man, they were ready to blow the end bungs out of them, and they were pushing out all the wax that they had shoved in them in Jamaica. And if I'm working them harder than Jamaica, I mean, I don't know, man. Heat definitely is an enemy and a friend all at the same time.
It's one of the worst things to come into the rick house and see. So we do palletized, we do high density, and you'll come in and that pallet at the top looks like a freshman and he has just lost his lunch on the bumps beneath him. Like that has cracked, that has splintered, that is going down. But to me, and I imagine it's for a lot of us, is that's what makes, especially I think like the Texas style, the Southwestern style, whatever you want to call it, or however you may want to group, is those really aggressive temperature fluctuations is what gives them so much character. You have that interaction with that oak. You have that just aggressive extraction. We're lucky in terms of, so you talk about the past 2 years. We had a heat dome last year where we had almost 2 months straight that we were over 113 degrees every day. And it's untenable, but at least we have swamp coolers. We have coolers in the distillery to keep us safe. And so we do have a little bit of some of that temperature control within our rick house. But yeah, you're still getting those 30 to 40 degree shifts. And it is the comment I always make when people come in through tours is when you're blending, it's within a gnat's ass. It is.
It really is.
We let it sit just a little too long. Now, and you have options. You can blend it away. You can create other things with it. But it is, when people say, "Oh, it must be a challenge," and it is a challenge. But I think we've tried to view it within Whiskey Del Bac as opportunities. You talk about working that chiller. We've specifically chosen a yeast strain that can handle high temperature fermentations, because it's not a matter of if the chiller goes down; it's when the chiller goes down.
Of course.
we had a power surge at 2 o'clock in the morning. Everything went down. And so, we use a yeast strain that can handle up to 95 degree Fahrenheit because we have to. And when you're conscientious of it, when you're thoughtful about it, instead of like, oh, we've got these really gross, everything's off balance. If you're conscientious of it, you can create these very interesting, very nuanced, very complex, and very unique products at the end of it.
Yeah, no, I'd say, well, we're a little different from my other compatriots there. It's altitude. We're at 7,000 feet. There's no air here. Come run a mile here and you'll figure it out. That's where all the Texans that come here to ski put the skis over the shoulder and try and hike to the ski basin, and they pass out in the parking lot. It's kind of fun. It's a game we have here in Santa Fe. Watch the Texans pass it out first. Anyway, off subject. So we do have heat, but it's not creating the same problems. We do have problems with our chiller. We do use a high temperature yeast, but we lose. We are still in the process of changing, not the recipe, but we stopped humidifying the warehouse. We tried it. We basically had to put a warehouse within a warehouse because otherwise you get that mold barrier, so that there's sort of what we call person temperature in the warehouse. And then inside that room, there's a rick house within the main warehouse. We're going to build another one. And we said, look, we just can't afford to build a room within a room. we're going to stop the humidity control, which means our losses are going to go up because those casks are going to, expand a bit more. We've done tests over the last 5 years. It takes us that long to get the money to put a building up, but there you go. Anyway, we've decided not to humidify, which means that our angel share is going to go from an average 12% a year to somewhere between 13 and 14.
Mhm.
Now, counter to that, which is cask strengths, etc., we put in anywhere between 112, 116, depending on how lazy the distillers are that day. Sorry, Moose. I'm not saying I'm saying, depending on what kind of day it is. It's, oh, geez, I can't be bothered. I'm put enough water in. I'm not watering back anymore. The RO plant packed in. We can't put anybody. Anyway, whatever. But, and it comes out typically around the 130 mark. So what we lose a lot, but because there's and everybody here knows, the alcohol being a sorbic is going to try and pull the moisture in from the atmosphere. There's that much moisture. There's no moisture. So it swings and roundabouts, as we would say. Oh, you don't have roundabouts in America. But anyway, that's an English expression. We're going to roll that in there. So, heat is an issue, but altitude is more of an issue.
And that's really interesting. I hadn't even thought about altitude.
7,000 feet. You'll find it with a lot of the Colorado folks too.
Mm-hmm.
I know Leopold's and theirs is, and Boulder Spirits. We talk about that a lot. So those angels
for us, and we've seen. So when I came on board even 3 years ago, our average angel share was 12, and I will tell you, over the last 2 years, it's now in the 15, 16 range. And one, obviously, heat domes, complete lack of moisture. And I imagine that's a similar thing across the board. But I don't know. That's something I've been thinking a lot more about, is what's that trade-off? We're creating these very interesting products, but man, 16% loss is a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. No, for us, we double, triple checked. It's not affecting the flavor. Pumping the humidity in and not, because we took some cask into an area that wasn't. We ran the dollars, to pump humidity, run those, and in the winter we try to keep the temperature sort of up a little bit because it drops way below freezing here. We can have days in the teens in Santa Fe because of our elevation. I'm going to show off, Moose. We don't get 20 to 40 day swings. We can get a 60 to 80% degree swing in a day.
No. Nope.
But, we've all got our challenges, and it's great. I mean, you talk to the guys in the Northwest, and God, it's too damp, Mm-hmm. And God, I wish we could stop the moss growing on the outside of the barrels and stuff like that, So it's different. But, altitude is ours.
I felt obligated to ask. I was in Tucson 2 weeks ago, and I'm not convinced that it's real. It was just a heat dream, some sort of fever dream. I still haven't recovered. And I don't know. I've seen Mark in person. I'm still not convinced that he and the rest of Arizona exist. It's too hot.
Not a mirage.
He's very ethereal.
I had friends come and visit last year in the middle of the heat wave in August, which I told them not to do, but they still did. And I get a text as I'm driving to pick them up from the airport. Why does the pavement hate me?
Yeah.
Welcome to Arizona in the summer.
Yeah.
I had to leave a pair of shoes behind. It was stuck. I just walked out of them. They're in the street. I had to leave them.
My one time in Arizona was the Phoenix airport, and it is surreal. It's
Sky Harbor's a fever dream anyway, so
it's. I mean, pardon the pun. It's a plane in every direction, and then mountains way in the distance, no matter which way you look.
Yeah.
So that question about is it a mirage? Yeah, it certainly does look like it. I just want to point out the use of the swamp cooler has the side effect. I guess this is for the benefit of the audience. It has the side effect of increasing the humidity. So yeah, I was going to ask sort of that follow up. Is I know that at Andalusia, it's all basically open air aging, so
Yeah.
there's zero climate control there.
When it's super hot, I mean, I'll throw a swamp cooler in there, but I mean, it goes right out the door. There are 14-foot bay doors on both ends of the building. They're up. I mean, yeah, it's hot, man.
Yeah. In similar fashion to Moose, they just let it do what the temperature tells it to do. I know balconists do the same as you guys. They just let it go temperature wise.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of conversation with Jared, and he said they just don't fight it. It's way too expensive. So we found the math, and it is.
And if you're trying to be sustainable in any way, and you're making
exactly.
whiskey
There
in
is a
these
sustainability
environments,
factor there too.
you're using water, you're using energy. Just lean into it.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a great follow up there. So a lot of distilleries are focused on reclaiming heat and cooling for efficiency. When you've got so much heat or just fundamental lack of environmental control, does that affect your ability to get those recovery, the energy recovery efficiency, however you want to put it?
I can tell you for us, like I would love for us to use more gray water. One of the things that is nice about Tucson is we have what's called monsoon season, which 95% of our moisture comes between May and September. And so you'll get this really aggressive dump of water in about 30 minutes. Now it's humid at 105. And you have those challenges. But like for us, so because we're using that more traditional off grain, we utilize our hot liquor tank. We're going to use our cold liquor tank, which cools our water, to cool our mash down. So, we mash in a little bit warmer, leaning into those heavier tannins. We use the water from our cold liquor tank to cool that wash down as it goes into the fermenter, and that water goes straight into our hot liquor tank. And so that's saving us several hundred gallons of water each time because heat transfer. Yeah, we have 55 degree temp water going into that heat exchanger. It's coming out at 110. We can refill what we need for our strike water within a single mash. And so it's a game of scale too. Like for us, we're small, and you can only do as much as you can when you're producing on a smaller batch scale. Like you can really lean into it and take advantage as you increase volume, increase things like that. But yeah, there's things on our end I know we wish we could do, but it's a matter of, is it even feasible within our production scale?
I'd say that's the same as we do. We use the heat exchanger, pump the water into a hot liquor tank, repump it. Saves a lot of energy, actually. It's a lot of energy to get, what is it, for us, 1,000 gallons back up again quickly. Again, being small, it's all economies of scale. We'd love to keep it all. And I looked into solar panels on the roof because we could heat electrically. Yeah. It was in between administrations. Go figure. I'll let you run the number. I'll let you figure out which administrations. It was in between administrations, and the numbers weren't there to get the credits we needed to afford the the heat exchanging. Good question, though. These are great questions.
There was just, I think, one more related question on climate control. Let me see if I can find it. From David Woodruff, we have, I assume the fermenters are glycol jacketed. What kind of yeast do you employ? Which I think are sort of two separate questions that are related.
Yeah.
For us, we do use a glycol, propylene glycol, because it's food safe, because God forbid you have some sort of failure within the system. It's going to taste like Fireball, which sucks, but you're not going to kill anyone.
The glycol puts it into the store. We don't. Yeah.
Yes.
There goes our Fireball sponsorship.
Sorry.
No chance at that now.
So for us, we use Distillamex from Lallemand, and because that's focused around 100% malt mash bill. It's going to consume some of those more complex, like maltodextrose, maltotriose. And again, it can handle those higher temperatures. In fact, this is a perfect example. We're lucky enough we have automation in our fermenters. So we ferment at 85 degrees Fahrenheit for the first 24 hours, and then we knock it down to 80 for the remainder. And we typically reach full attenuation in 4 days. So it's very aggressive. We're producing a lot of really interesting ester profiles. 2 of our 3 readers on our fermenters went down. And so that meant we were manually controlling the glycol that was going in and exiting. And yeah, thank God we had this yeast that can handle these very aggressive temperatures, because you could walk in the next day and like, oh, hey, F1 is at 98. And yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Hit the button 10 times, quick. Blow on it quickly. No, we tried. No, very similar. Ours is a fermentis yeast. It's a Macallan strain that we were importing, and I forget our new head distiller Stephen. He's changed the guy who supplies it. It's not Macallan and an offshoot of their company anymore, but similar. It doesn't go quite as high as that. I can't remember the temperatures, to be honest. I haven't distilled in a while, but yeah, it's a higher temperature, but we do all have to watch it. I know for all of us, when a storm goes through, we're all checking our phones, because most of us now have, probably the control panel connected to our phones. I don't. I did stop that. The distillers take care of it now. I'm very lucky. I don't think the new company wants me messing with anything, just in case, But yeah, we used to check the control panel onto the phones. Oh dear, let's go figure something out, And putting fans on doesn't work. Go reset the switches,
One of the worst feelings is getting a phone call from the tour guide.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, we talked a little bit ago about Pinon and Juniper, and we definitely know all about Juniper here in Bend, Oregon. But Andalusia, the Striker, a couple of different types of wood: oak, mesquite, applewood. I actually had a beechwood smoked whiskey from Modesto, California, a couple of days ago. Wondering I know that there's certainly a limit in some places, that there's just only so many things that grow. But do any of you have designs on other types of wood or other things that you would like to smoke for your whiskey? Obviously, this is a mesquite smoked conversation, but it seems like people are experimenting with more types of wood all the time and different things. Wondering if there's something else out there that maybe you've had your eye on or you'd like to try someday.
I've used several different things. I mentioned earlier our all Texas grain single malt Paladuro. The very first iteration of that, about 10 to 15% of the mash bill was smoked with peachwood. And so right where we're at in the hill country in central Texas, there are peach orchards all around us, man. So at certain times of the year, peachwood's super, super abundant. We hadn't done it in a while, but I've been allowed to kind of just, as long as all of my grain is grown in Texas, kind of do crazy things with this brand. So for the past 2 years, it has not been smoked at all. It's had a couple different change-ups in the grain bill and maybe cask treatment, but it hadn't been smoked. This next year's we'll be releasing in 25 is smoked with pecan wood. So pecans being the state tree of Texas, and it to me gives off a lot of like maple syrup vibes when you break down the smoke profiles in a whiskey. So that's one that's coming out. I've redone the peachwood. I've done a lot of just applewood. As for things that grow around here, we've got a lot of wild persimmon trees around, and I need to further investigate on what kind of flavors that are going to really give to the whiskey before I go, full bore and start loading down the firebox full of wild persimmon. But I've got an inkling that it's going to be nice and fruity and mellow and soft and sweet, kind of similar to a pear or an apple would. I mean, other than a smell of a rotting persimmon, persimmons aren't super aggressive. So I feel like that's a fun path to take. And there's like some crabapple trees growing down by the Blanco River that I'm going to investigate. I don't know anything about crab apples, but, for us, the mesquite was super, super abundant. Oak is obviously super abundant. It's all over the property. Mesquite, not so much anymore. So I'm actually having to, go down to the hardware store and buy like bundles of mesquite wood these days. But there's mesquite everywhere around here. There's other kind of variants of mesquite. We've got huisach trees. The leaves look very, very similar to a mesquite tree, but they bloom little yellow puffballs, man, and they smell like Johnson's baby powder. It's beautiful. So that's how you know spring is here, man. All those, they'll look like mesquite trees, and they'll just be decorated with little yellow dingleberries that smell like Johnson's baby powder. It's beautiful. But you can cook with it, man, and it tastes a whole lot like mesquite. So it'd be fun just to do a solo mesquite thing. I've got some other things that are in the works that I'm not going to let go of my secrets just yet, but I've definitely played with a laundry list of different woods. A lot of them turn out a lot worse than I wanted them to. A lot of them have turned out pretty freaking cool, man. Sugar maple is beautiful when you use it, like you're doing some home distilling experiments, like just toasting sugar maple cubes and doing a finish with sugar maple cubes is really, really nice. I can't seem to get any real discernible flavor out of sugar maple using it as a smoking medium. Other than kind of just a bland, sweet smoke. It doesn't have any real standout character to it. But, if I were in a part of the country where that was just a native tree around me, I would be pumping up, all the marketing I could around like what an awesome freaking wood sugar maple is to smoke with. So I don't know. I think we probably all hold our own little biases about what's the best wood when it comes to flavor wise. And I mean, it's all a very subjective thing too. Like what I like it and what you like or what Mark likes or Colin or anybody else. We all, or that certain amount, I like to go completely overboard until I've gone too far. And then it's time to drink rum, So I don't know. That's my experience with different smoking woods.
Yeah. We're purely sticking with mesquite at the moment. As I say, there's a new bunch of decision makers, which is going to get very interesting. But one of my jobs is the title is say is founder. I think it means old guy. But anyway, they'll wheel me out and say, "Hey, what ideas you've got?" And they're focusing on the apple brandy a bit at the moment, and we're out looking at apple brandy varietals, which is great.
Cool.
Maybe it'll come around because they have sort of the means to do more, which is great. But yeah, we'll wait and see where it all goes. Currently, it's all mesquite.
Right.
The joke we make in Arizona is that we're America's Australia. Everything here wants to kill you. Palo Verde, toxic smoke. Ironwood, toxic smoke. Greasewood, toxic smoke. So again, like I feel like we hit a lot on our founder, was raised here, and it is something we're trying to really make evocative, because you can go to any store and drink any sort of delicious booze, and that's cool. But like if it's something that can give you a sense of place, and I have been kicking around this idea. So Arizona means good oak. The Quercus arizonica is what the state is named after. It is also a nightmarishly hard wood.
Cute cat.
Kitty. And so Smoking with that, I don't know, but the idea of maybe toasting it, maybe doing some sort of char on it to create something that is, again, focused on that Arizona Providence, you can't build a barrel out of it. I've talked to a couple of different people. They're like, no, you don't build furniture with it. You don't. It's one of the few woods you can burn in Arizona that won't actively try to kill you. So, but as for now, yeah, mesquite. Mesquite is good. It's abundant. It's native.
Yeah.
So,
And it happens to be fantastic and delicious. So,
yeah. I will say, sideline, when the cat showed up, Phil took us back to our little cat at the distillery. Mesquite is her name. Mesquite wood. It's a great name for
Nice.
a cat. But anyway, check out Mesquite Santa Fe Spirits. She has, I think, 5,000 followers. We have 2 as a company. She has 5. Go figure. Anyway, just a sideline.
she definitely is
Yeah,
the best
on
performer
that
our
note, Gato Del Bac or Gatos Del Bac
yes.
is another.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
Turo, our longtime distillery cat, has actually retired. She is living here with my wife and I. She's actually in my wife's office right now while she's taking a class. She even asked, she goes, "You're going to be talking about Whiskey Del Bac. Should you bring Turo in?"
Yes.
She was settled up. She was fine. So,
Okay.
so Turo was our ambassador for 10 years. And she felt it was time for her to retire, live the life of luxury with soft pillows and air conditioning. So we do have 2 new distillery cats, which are Waldo and Pablo. And so
Cool.
you can follow them at Gatos Del Bac on Instagram.
I'll follow.
Yeah, I put those in the chat, but I'm just going to highlight those comments real quick so that anybody who wants to see them on screen, but we'll also put them in the description so you can find them, because who doesn't want to follow distillery cats? And on that note, Moose, do you have any distillery animals? Professional mousers?
We've definitely got distillery mice that we are trying to catch. No, I think that's a pretty common thing when you've got a big warehouse full of grain and little places for them to hide. We've got some feral cats that hide. One of them is a 3-legged calico cat. They're extremely skittish. They live underneath some storage containers. They don't like real food. They don't like cat food. They like real food. They definitely live wild. You rarely see them.
Children, whatever they can get. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But you don't really see mice unless they leave one for you, so they're there doing their job, as cats do. But other than that, no, we've got distillery sparrows that are quite annoying, and they live in our rafters, and they like to crap on everything I do at about 6:45 every morning.
Okay. When I say Mesquite's a distillery cat, she's a distillery tour cat. I'm not sure she's killing very much, actually. Because
It's how Turo was. Mascot versus mouser.
Yeah. Anyway, I might catch a mouse this month. She's not exactly a hard worker. But I've got some employees like that too. So anyway, let's go.
All right, I'm going to highlight just a little bit of love that's come in through the stream so far as a little bit of a break. And Phil, Rangers Respite Phil, maybe you can take the next question in a moment. We'll see if the audio works out, and we'll be patient with the delay. So yeah. So from Kathy Huey, got introduced to American Single Malts after trying buying a single barrel bottling from Andalusia. Looking forward to try new bottlings from different distilleries. Well, you've got 2 great ones on screen right now, so can recommend them. Also, I hope you guys don't mind. I'm just going to shout out a lot of these distilleries. I think every single one of these distilleries you can get from Lost Lantern, which has the advantage of shipping to most of the United States. So that's a great way to get to try some of these distilleries. Richie Z, thanks for joining, and cheers to all of those people as well. I chose this comment because it lets me give the shout out to the most people on screen at once. So thanks very much, and thanks for subscribing. And yes, there was another comment. We are simulcasting right now on Instagram, Twitch if you care, the Bourbon Vans YouTube channel, and the Single Malt Frontier YouTube channel as well. So if you haven't checked us out yet, or you haven't checked out the Bourbon Van yet, you should subscribe to both. I think I saw a couple of other good comments. But feel free to signal me when you're ready for a question. I also looked up the Wasatch trees just so I knew how to spell that. So there you go.
It's
Oh,
not what you think it is.
I spelled it completely wrong. It doesn't start with a W. Okay, well, there you go.
Yeah, credit to search engines that they figured out what the hell I meant when I started with W.
W-E-E. No, S. No, it's not. I would say, sorry, not to talk over Phil, but while he's, coming up with questions, big shout out to the American Single Malt Whiskey Commission, which I'm sure everybody here knows very much, whether all the audience do. That's worth Googling and checking out. We are going to have recognition as a category sometime soon, which is waiting for the federal government. Go figure. It's coming. Yeah.
I probably said
moves
whiskey
at the
ban.
speed of government.
Yeah, we hit the 2-year mark. No, we're going to a 2-year mark in September of having finished all our side and waiting for them. Anyway.
And your microphone is muted just in case. Yeah. It's showing on screen as muted. That version. Yeah. There's so many buttons that can mute your mic. All right. Well, while Phil gets sorted out, I have another follow-up. So I noticed that all three of you have prominently mentioned a White Dog product. And that feels like an interesting trend. And I know that me personally, I Phil is probably resetting his internet.
Phil got mad and walked away.
Oh God, he left.
He just gave up.
There he is, back again.
So while we're on the topic of, let's just continue this question here. So I've noticed that smoky single malts have a tendency to be exceptional in their unaged form. Is that the reason that you keep those products on the book, or is it just kind of a part of your past and you think they taste good, so you keep them around?
I can tell you for Whiskey Del Bac is because bartenders love it. So a little my cards on the table. So we have what's called Old Pueblo, which is our unaged mesquite smoked new make. And every time we bottle that, it breaks my heart a little because that's stuff that could be laid down and aging and becoming Dorado. But our sales team love it and the bartenders love it. We actually had never really intended to bottle it as a product. New make Mike Smoke can be divisive. And we just had a bunch of bartenders, especially, we're 60 miles from the border. We are right along the Mexican border. And so a lot of bartenders were looking for an alternative to mezcal, to tequila, to bacanora. And that's where Old Pueblo came in, was people would come through on the tours, they would taste it. And even though it is 100% malted barley, it does have this almost agave-like quality to it. And so it has become kind of the darling of the bartender scene within Arizona. So yeah, that's why Old Pueblo still exists within us. One of our sales guys absolutely loves it. He'll sell it, and then he'll call me and be like, I know this hurts you. If it's making people happy, that's the goal. That's the point. But yeah, I would love for it to become Dorado.
100% true. I'd say that we Silver Curdy was an unaged whiskey. It's not a smoked whiskey, ours isn't. So we did it unsmoked, and it's like the ugly red-headed stepchild. I think all our distributors and bartenders have some kind of ESP going on because that's it. We're not going to make Silver Curdy anymore, and then we get an order for a pallet from Southern Glaciers, or some bartender wins an award with Silver Curdy as the backdrop for his cocktail. Okay, we'll bring it back again. However, just to reiterate what Mark said, it's mistaken for tequila, partly because of the way we packaged it, not unintentionally. And we do whiskeritas here. Santa Fe is the margarita capital. It's not. Everywhere else in the Southwest is. And we do whiskeritas, and they are a big hit. It hurts a little, but it outsells in season for the tourists. But there you go.
That is pretty much the story at Andalusia. Only ours isn't in distribution. Though the white whiskey is unsmoked. It's our Irish style triple distilled. But we keep it around mainly for the bartenders in the tasting room. Man, it does our whiskey margarita. It is the background for our little fun, my kind of cocktail. I like fruity cocktails with like umbrellas, and they come in coconuts and they're funny colors and stuff. That's my jam. But we yeah, man, like hamburgers hanging off of it. We use it in a Bloody Mary, like a blackberry fizzy drink. I don't know what they call it. They don't allow me behind the bar. But it's got its place. And it does kind of have a whole agave thing to it until you put it next to an agave spirit, and then you're like, holy shit, that's not agave at all. But it leans that way, especially if you've talked yourself into it. I personally don't know why people love it so much. As the guy that has to make cuts on a still, and you taste White Dog go from bad to good, and everything we do is out of a pot still, and it's all sensory. So nothing is dictated by proof or a time of day or phase of moon or temperature or anything else other than does it taste good and does it feel like fire in my mouth? If it feels like fire, it's going away. If it tastes good, it's nice and the way it should be, we're going to keep it. So, yeah, I don't know. I lost track of where I was going. So,
Yeah. So I think over to Ranger's Respite for the next question.
All right. I have a couple, and hopefully you can hear me. So I recall not too long ago, I think it was last summer or the summer before, I know that at Whiskey Del Bac you were having trouble with the heat being an issue for shipping your spirits out of the distillery. Is that common across the Southwest, or was that sort of a localized issue for you?
So I will tell you, it was something I had never dealt with before, I started distilling in Kansas. I distilled in the mid-Atlantic. I had never dealt with, hey, we have a special release coming out in the summer. We're packing it. It's going out direct to consumer, and then getting phone calls of, my cork completely blew off. And, ethanol is extremely volatile. As you have those heat fluctuations, you're creating that pressure. For us, at least for me, it was a learning experience, and talking to a lot of winemakers. And I talked to at least a dozen winemakers who said, oh no, we don't ship between May and October for that reason. Either you're spoiling the wine, the nice thing is, ethanol's very resilient, unless you're subjecting it to sustained heat, sustained UV, it tends to be pretty standard. We were just having issues with, so it's 115 according to NOAA, according to the, government weather service. It's getting over 200 in the back of those UPS vans. And to me, it was something we had never even considered, it is just straight up forcing the closures out of the bottles, even with a capsule on top of it. And I feel, unfortunately, is probably the reality we're living in now, is at least until, aggressive changes can be made, that we just kind of have to be conscientious. And and that's one of the worst feelings as a producer, is getting that phone call, getting that email being like, yeah, no, I got the product, but even a little bit of that just burst out and went down to the side of the label. So one of the challenges presented being a producer within the desert.
That was a wild thing. I had to deal with that myself. I had samples from Murphy Quint delivered to my parents' house in Texas because I was visiting them for a month ahead of the interview. And I was like, well, I'm going to open these for the interview, but then I'm going to need to get them home. I'm going to need to pack these bottles in my luggage open, right? And I said, hey, Dad, what happens when ethanol gets hot in a tiny bit of headspace or gets low pressure? in a tiny bit of headspace when it's on the plane in the hold. and he's into fluid dynamics and everything. So we were puzzling over this. Either nothing happens or it's really bad news. So I ended up doing the thing that when I get bottles shipped to me, sometimes they're wrapped like 20 times over with plastic wrap, which is basically just putting extra tensile pressure on the cork. And that's the best I could do. I ended up getting no leaks on the way home, which is great. But I could see that being a huge problem when you're shipping different elevations and super hot regions. I mean, I know you were trying to ship bottles to me.
There's 3 days. You have 3 days of sustained triple degree heat. And then, you can mark the package, keep it upright, but it's getting drop kicked into the back of a freight vehicle.
Well, our heat here isn't typically as bad, but we distribute in Texas and Arizona, so that's when it happens. And they've started putting it in, cooled trucks. Most of the trucks now for the distributors are chilled, but there's always one. And, I always tell the salesman, don't throw them in a bag and just throw it in the back seat. If it's laying over, it's got to be upright. You can pop a cork, but if it's upright and it's in a, those sample bags, it's typically okay. You can smell it. You don't want to get pulled over.
I think one of our biggest issues we were encountering with the heat wave over the last 2 years was, more than anything, our closures were sitting in a warehouse, and the glue that was keeping the plastic topper on the actual synthetic cork was just loosening up and coming off, and to the point that it was an issue with other people's brands of whiskey during that time, because that particular manufacturer of closure, it was just an issue to the point that we moved to one that is a solid one piece.
The mono block.
You got it.
God bless the mono block.
So cool. It's the way to go, dude. It's the best.
Is that in mine? Oh, no. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. I love that. But
this
that was
is
our biggest
officially
issue.
my new favorite cork type, right?
Yeah.
No two
It was-
pieces glued together. The monofill.
I need
mold
you to
of
understand,
rubber.
I was losing sleep over those separation issues.
I think we all were, man. It was insane, and people were pissed. Like, we were peeling them off before we sold them to them. I'm like, come on, man.
I got an email that said, check your quality assurance. And I'm like, man, I am buying from the largest suppliers in the world.
Yeah.
Right.
Taffy and exactly. I mean, when I was in Texas, I'd go to bars the first time, and it'd be like, they found a wine cork and it's stuck in the top. Oh my God, it upsets you. So I used to travel with extra corks with newer, better, and they've actually now got those ones have a mechanical lock in them as well as the glue. So they changed the top of the mono,
Right.
with the wood on top. But I'll travel with a bag of 20 or 30 of those and say, hey, here's some corks,
Just have some extra.
Bartok, not cork. But to see a wine bottle cork stuffed in the top of the bottle of whiskey on a back bar, everybody in this top line of this call is like, oh my God, don't do that,
Hey, I've had to do that, right? Sometimes the cork breaks, and the closest thing you can get to shove in the top of a bottle is the relatively more
It's
spongy
whatever you can find,
wine corks. Actually, I had a cork break. The Aberlour Abuna, which is such a weird sized cork.
Yeah.
Here's shout out to everyone to standardize on your cork sizes, because it's really nice as a whiskey nerd to be able to just grab a cork from an empty bottle and make it fit.
Well, that's a
The
thought.
Abuna is so fat that I had to just cover my bottle with parafilm for 2 days until I found someone who had a replacement cork.
I've got an answer. Finish the bottle.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
A
You've
new
got
one.
650 milliliters left to go. That's a tall order.
Just saying.
I will say I don't have it here with me because I'm not at home, but I have a Virginia Distillery Company bottle that's got a Blanton's cork in it because I experienced the separation where the top came off. And
Gareth
it happened.
doesn't mess around with his quality. Typically, he's fixed that. I'm sure it might have been an older bottle, but yeah.
Oh yeah,
you're
it
right.
was.
You got to grab what you can.
I believe the second batch of Courage and Conviction.
Okay, so it's a while ago. Yeah. They're still good. Yeah.
So my next question, at Doug's prompting, is about cuts. How are you making cuts, and how badly does taste fatigue, sort of, or sensory fatigue, factor into, especially comparatively between your unsmoked and smoked malts?
So I can speak for Whiskey Del Bac. So we're copper pot distilled, double copper pot. And so we're looking at vapor temp, we're looking at kettle temp, we're looking at proof. But at the end of the day, it comes down to us dipping our finger in, tasting it, smelling it. And for me, I don't eat or drink anything that day. It is, I come in, we fire for a spirit run, and until we make that cut into tails, we're doing what we can to reduce that. The other issue is, palate changes from day to day. Like, that's the thing that when I first started distilling, I had to learn that issue of like, it is not the same. This is subjective. We are human. We can have these temperature proof, these things we can track. But at the end of the day, it comes down to our decision. With smoke, polyphenols come off in the tails. They're the heavier oils. And for us, because we age in smaller format barrels, that's where the challenge really comes in, is that idea of, can we get enough smoke out that we can create something that is consistently what has become, the spec for Whiskey Del Bac? It's one of the reasons I'm a big believer in panel tasting. There will be 3 of us within production. Yeah, I may have lead on that, but I'm going to lean in on Dustin, our lead distiller. I'm going to lean in our production distillers. Our sales team is walking through. I want you to taste this, because while I think it may be good or I think it may be off, I need someone else. 2 years into distilling, I thought I knew what I was doing. I know less now after 8 years of distilling than I did. And I will always tell this story when you cannot trust yourself explicitly. You have your own biases. I'm tasting stuff coming from this bourbon run, and I'm like, this is amazing. This is where it needs to be. It's perfect. And our sales guy comes through and he tastes it and he goes, what are you making? I said, well, bourbon.
Wow.
He goes, there's something off about this. I'm like, nah, you don't know what you're talking about. And okay, we pulled in some people from the tasting room. The next day I had the flu. Like, I couldn't smell, I couldn't taste. The day before I even knew that I wasn't feeling well, my palate was off. And so I will always push for panel tasting, for wider data sets. And yes, again, I will reserve that choice to make that cut, but I'm not some random arbiter of what is high quality. And so 100%. For us, it's a team thing. We come together and we say, this is where the cuts need to be made.
I'd reiterate what he said, but we do that. Our head distiller now, Steve, and he's come up with a bit of a formula. It is, as Mark said, it's a team thing. He'll pick. We typically blend 15 casks. And I know Mark and Moose get this too. That's the size of our blending tank. Go figure. So it's a 15 cask blend. It's typically 2/3 mesquite smoke. No, yeah, 2/3 unsmoked to 1/3 smoke, et cetera, et cetera. But so it's not smoke. Typically a third new oak to 2/3 used oak, but up and down a little bit. So he'll pick from 60 casks. Yes, yes, yes. No, no, no. Get it down to 30. Then he'll take it to the other couple of distillers. They'll taste through it. They'll get it down to 15. Then we'll taste what's going to go in the blend taste them all separately. We want the smoke, we want the oak, we want the middle, we want the sugar, we want the et cetera, et cetera. You know, the grains, the grassy notes, and then we mix it. Then, and I know again, Mark and Moose were all small enough. We have different angel shares that come out of each cask. If one's lost a third and the other one's lost 2/3, your blend's going to be different. 15 casks seems to homogenize is a really bad word, but it works here. Homogenize the differences, and then we go back again. And it takes us about 2 months, but we typically have 6 whiskey samples out on a table. If you go into the office, you'll taste them before you hit your desk. And, you know, it sounds like a great job, as we all know here. It's, oh, geez, okay, I'll sip, 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 sip. You know, it is a sip. You know, we've all probably drunk more here in one of our tastes than we have in a tasting to go into the cask, you know. But anyway, sorry, Moose.
Yeah, we relate to that. I know Phil and I take moderation extremely seriously in the Whiskey Lodge.
Yeah.
And, you know, quarterly dry weeks and all that. And after we started doing this show, the majority of what we were drinking on a week for a few months there was literally on this show. And then it got to a point where we're like, hey, maybe we should like start using a spit cup, because like we're adding a lot to our alcohol consumption just doing this show. Yeah, definitely. You get together and you talk like this and you end up drinking more than you normally would in the course of things.
Yeah, it's all good whiskey. That's why.
Definitely true. All right, we've got a... Wow, I just muted myself in the middle of talking. We've got about 5 minutes left, so I want to ask maybe a couple of rapid fire questions. Phil, do you have anything that's like answerable in a word or two?
Yeah, I do. It's not even a question. I just wanted to say that I'm blown away by Mesquite-Smoked Whiskey, especially American Single Malt Whiskeys. And after traveling the Southwest for 100 days this year, coming home and retasting these whiskeys that I enjoyed so much on the road, they really do taste like the Southwest. They bring me right back to where I was when I tried each of these for the first time, from Tucson to El Paso to the places that I picked each one of these up. And they have been the perfect whiskeys to share with other people in rooms where perhaps most people that I've shared them with had never tried a mesquited whiskey before. Just want to say that I appreciate so much what you're creating, and these whiskeys are amazing. These brands are amazing. So to those of you who are watching who have never tried these, and it seems like a lot of us, you know, I'm lucky to live on the West Coast and be close to a lot of what, you know, to be able to get a lot of these, find them online. They're worth seeking out. These are great whiskeys, not just change of pace whiskeys. They will blow your mind.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm going to throw a little more love in the bourbon van's direction. They have a Del Bac Mesquite Smoked Bourbon van pick, and a couple of people in chat have been drinking that tonight. So seems like everyone's enjoying it quite well.
Good.
Yeah. Also, Eric Gunderson, Eric C. And thanks everyone again for tuning in. Again, you know, like, subscribe, leave a review, tell your friends, all that good stuff. Here's a question I'm going to answer real quick. McCarthy's, as far as anyone in the American Single Malt Commission knows, after doing much research, was the first American single malt produced. Steve McCarthy was the first person to distill an American single malt. You can hear more from.
It's either Steve or it's McCarthy's, or possibly the San Francisco fellas.
St. George.
St. George. Lance and Steve are very, very close.
Yep.
30 years ago, you know, inspired.
As far as I know, St. George has yielded the title to McCarthy.
Oh, good. Okay, I wasn't sure who was, but yeah,
my understanding.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
So you can definitely hear. We have interviews from a lot of these producers actually already on this channel. You can hear from Joseph O'Sullivan, former master distiller of McCarthy's. You can hear from Caitlin Bartlemay, current master distiller of McCarthy's. You can hear from Steve Hawley himself, president of the American Single Malt Commission, he made reference to this as well. There's a lot of good interviews on this channel at this point, which is a really cool thing to be able to say finally, and sort of get out of my own way and say, hey, we've got an archive that actually has some substantial information in it. So yeah, please do check those out. Let's see. This may not be a rapid fire question, but Colin, you mentioned that your mesquite has a lot in common with juniper. So I just had this immediate question. Have you thought of doing a mesquite gin?
We did actually do a mesquite-smoked gin. It didn't work out, but we're trying other renditions of it. You know, I mean, everybody, again, on the top line here, will say, yeah, that one, no. And, you know, we mesquite smoked it and we tempered it with aging for another year. But we are back to rethinking it. We could turn it into we did one which was a liqueur, which was sweetened with honey, which sort of tempered the sweetness, and then put it back in the casks, and then finished it as a liqueur. It's being played with, let's put it that way.
Awesome. Well, that's time. So I want to get us into wrapping up here. So there was one question that went by that I actually want to do a little shout out again. So Eric Gunderson says, I'm glad the ASM finally has an official designation. Asterisk. Cool that ASM has its regional differences in terroir. Definitely.
We still haven't gotten the official recognition from TTB.
We're still waiting.
Exactly. And so, yes, we're still waiting on TTB to ratify those rules. And we want you, everyone who's watching right now, to write to the TTB. So this link that I've just put up on screen that is in the description, there is a letter writing campaign going on right now. It's been 2 years since the proposal came out, and we're still waiting. And we're about to have an administration change, which means that the speed of government is going to slow to a crawl, which means that if we don't get this done soon, it's going to be a lot longer. So please write in support of the American Single Malt Whiskey definition, right, to TTB at spiritsunited.org. Link is on the screen. And hey, thanks everyone for tuning in and for your praise of all of these brands and the hosts. We really appreciate it. Yeah, no need to apologize, Eric. It is easy to believe that it has become official at this point, but we're still technically waiting, right? Everyone who's making American Single Malt Whiskey with the commission pledge is making it according to those rules. So it is almost entirely, but except for not quite, a real bona fide category right now. So yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I have been, every time Colin or Mark or Moose is talking, I've been sipping along with their whiskey. I have, you know, I don't always think the same thing is my favorite, but I have picked out a favorite today, as much of a hot potato as that is, and no offense to everyone else. So I like to pick up my favorite drink of the evening and cheers to go out on. So that's why I mentioned this now. So for me tonight, and I've never had to pick between brands before. So all of these whiskeys that I have, the Andalusia Striker, the Del Bac Mega Mesquite from Lost Lantern, and the Kilkegan Cask Strength are all phenomenal whiskeys that are different from each other, which is really cool to see. By the way, I get a lot of that fur-for-all on the Striker today, Moose. Yeah. My favorite of the evening, though, is the Kilkegan Cask Strength. It's my first time tasting the Kilkegan Cask Strength, it has really blown me away. So that's my choice. Everybody else?
Here's a shout out to the two. I don't have it in. I'm in a rental at the moment, but you've just reminded me I need to go restock my whiskey collection. I'll be digging out Andalusia when I can find it for my collection, and the same with Del Bac too. Kudos.
It's amazing to taste everything and how it tastes different, and it's still part of that same cohesive idea of what Mesquite American Single Malt can be. So thank you for letting us come on and talk.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me, and I'm glad I behaved myself. You know? No, I like to play on it a little more than it is. I really do appreciate being here with everybody and listening to all the knowledge, and I feel pretty blessed just to be in this industry with so many awesome people to learn from. And you know, there's the people that are patrons of the industry, and to all the distilleries that give us a job, give me a reason to go to work and make whiskey and taste spirits to be like, this sucks. Why am I tasting this? Oh, this is why. Thank you, man. Without you guys running shows like this, without people buying whiskey, and without cats like Colin and Mark, man, people like me that have only been in the industry for 4 or 5 years, or even less time, there's a lot to be learned, and knowledge is pretty free flowing around here, and I just think it's a beautiful thing, and I appreciate everybody being here and everybody being a part of it, man.
Right.
Kudos to
And
craft
Bill,
whiskeys.
Thanks to the
I
Bourbon
say
Can
craft
for
whiskeys,
joining us, our co-host
specifically
today.
single malts, but all of them. We love our industry. I know everybody does. All of us. Cheers.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers.
The best industry to be in.
It is. And
Or
Phil,
the
Mr.
little
Bourbon
the Bourbon
Van,
Van
I
is
drive through Bend pretty often. I just moved to Eugene, Oregon, as a holiday place, so I'll be up your way with a whole gang of whiskey. Let me know when, and we'll get together.
oh man. Your timing is incredible because we're hitting the road very soon.
Smash
We're
it.
going to be heading for the Midwest actually after a couple of weeks here. But then our plan is to go start the year in the Southeast, and we started on I-10 this year from the West Coast and moved inland.
There you go.
And this year we're going to go to the Southeast and come back that way. So we're going to be in all of your neighborhoods. So with a little luck, we'll see all three of you in the next year.
Everybody's welcome all the time. Everybody knows that. Cheers, guys.
All the time.
Cheers. And to our viewers, your homework, should you choose to accept it, is to go find bottles of Whiskey Del Bac, Kilkeegan, or Andalusia.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And there's a lot of things to cheers to. But I guess I didn't really get to editorialize a whole lot at the beginning, but one thing that I love about the mesquite smoked angle on American Single Malt is that this is something that feels so uniquely American. So cheers to being unique in the world of whiskey and producing some excellent products with that. So cheers, everybody.
Sancho.
Until next time, we'll see you in the lodge.
See you
Good night,
soon,
everybody.
guys. Bye.